Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 12 of Outlaw Star. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, the Outlaw Star failed to finish in the top 3 in the big space race, and therefore they have been further indebted. Beyond that, the El Dorado dropped out of the race before Gene could really do any meaningful confronting, but they did send him a little message cube, so, given that the title of the episode is Mortal Kombat with the El Dorado, I think it's safe to say that things are gonna hit the fan in a big way. Whether or not the MacDougals ambush the Outlaw Star or what, or if it's more of a mutual combat situation, things are gonna get interesting, I reckon. I feel like when the intro's talking about how dangerous the MacDougal brothers are, I think that's a pretty good indication that things are going fanward, and at a rather swift pace, too. So it seems like Gene has wasted no time in immediately setting course for the El Dorado's alleged location. I do find it kind of interesting that Gene and company have elected to keep Eijitan clan on board. Granted they've, I guess, kind of buried the hatchet as much as really it's possible to do so, but it is also important to note that they've just sort of jumped into this, full tilt. They haven't taken the time to collect Suzuka. Not that I feel like she's going to be much help on a ship. If they're doing ship-to-ship combat here, then, everything's really just kind of relying on Gene and the specs of the Outlaw Star itself. I don't think much of the crew is going to be very helpful otherwise. Now, the interesting thing is that they've essentially traveled to this asteroid field that, the El Dorado has allegedly decided to hang out in, and there's no sign of it, It really seems like a dangerous proposition. Although, that said, Mr. MacDougal there, he's laid the trap carefully, I imagine, because he's saying, if you beat me to this point here, I'll tell you whatever you want to know. But I think Gene and everyone is really under the impression that this is gonna devolve into a fight pretty quickly. And, given the MacDougals and their reputation, that's not exactly a dangerous bet to take, The trouble is that while they're navigating this asteroid field, there is other interference that sort of disables radar and stuff. So I don't know. It seems like an especially dangerous place to be. And I guess we're just going to keep flashing back and forth from previously and now the present day. I guess at the very least, they're explaining why Aisha Clan is hanging out with them and why, they're not at each other's throats. So that's interesting, The galactic ley line is this place somewhere out in space that seemingly contains a whole bunch of treasure. And the general assumption is that it's precious metals or minerals or something like that. I find it kind of interesting that would be the case, because, insofar as anything is plentiful in the void of space, you can find precious metals in things. Like, there have been asteroids that have been made of, if not entirely of gold, then certainly containing vast amounts of it. And, mining an asteroid's one thing while it's, traveling at, high speeds. But I feel like for some astrological body, like the galactic ley line, for it to contain, so much gold as to be, really, really worthwhile, I feel like that's, a dangerous thing, economically speaking, just because it might devalue gold as a whole by virtue of increasing the supply. Now, we have this guy again. We saw him briefly, and he was sort of curious about the Outlaw Star and what it's doing here. But, yeah, there's something sinister about this guy, he was involved in the race, but it seems as though that's merely an incidental thing, He's sort of playing it up like he's interested in the ship for its racing performance, and, I don't think that's really true. He's asking a lot of pointed questions here about, where'd you acquire such a ship that, doesn't have an obvious make and model? And seeing as how he noticed the ship by its model number rather than Outlaw Star, as it's called, it seems like this guy, if he's not necessarily in the know about the galactic ley line, then, he certainly wants it for whatever it holds. Because, if nothing else, we know that the ship, the Outlaw Star, is in some way related. Yeah, that's a very suspect interaction, if I do say so myself. Yeah, I don't know. If I was Gene in a situation like this, I would be a little bit concerned, because that was, frankly, just a bizarre encounter. And, everyone's, kind of wondering about it. Can't say I blame them, but at this point in time, there aren't really any answers. So that's a wee bit of good news. It seems like the reactors that had been damaged during the race have been repaired, so everything's kind of good once again. Just in time to be attacked by the El Dorado. And I guess, understanding the reputation of the McDougals as we, the audience, do, I feel like it's no big surprise that they would try something like this, because they do seem to be rather mercenary in attitude. I reckon McDougal here, this was probably a plausible deniability shot, saying I guess if he hit them, it's oh man, you guys suck, you were supposed to dodge that, but yeah, I don't know. It's certainly not very sporting. Yeah, alright, so any attempted conversation is kind of being ignored. Gene's just kind of jumping right into this to what I feel is probably his detriment, Because the McDougalls are certainly dangerous people, and Gene is still kind of a novice at this whole ship-to-ship combat business. I mean, just looking at this thing on the whole, inviting someone to an asteroid field for what will then become a one-on-one ship duel, that's not good, Because I feel like an asteroid field is very dangerous territory just for purposes of, traveling around. But if you're getting into a dogfight, that's, it seems like a really good way to, dash your ship on some asteroids and, rupture the hull, So the situation's kind of percolating for everyone. It seems like this is really a very dangerous place to be, and, the Eldorado's got all sorts of highly accurate firepower, so really the only thing to do is to close the distance and engage in melee combat, but it really seems like it's easier said than done, seeing as how the Eldorado can maneuver almost miraculously in this asteroid field, sort of cutting around and seeming to disappear. I mean, it's, not beyond the realm of possibility with all the asteroid cover here. Ooh. So that's interesting that Gilliam is so dead set that his navigation computer is, superior to that of the Eldorado. Which, given everything we've learned about, these sneak attacks with missiles and just luring someone out to an asteroid field, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some other chicanery going on here, I mean, maybe a 3D projection is, maybe that's a bit beyond the realm of possibility, but there's definitely something going on here. This is obviously a trap. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these asteroids have been rigged with weaponry or something like that, so that these surprise attacks can be pulled off from unguarded corners. I mean, for what it's worth, at least, Gene seems to be holding his own, albeit barely. He's only just survived a couple barrages of missiles. Things haven't really escalated to their fullest extent, I'd guess. Because, while the Outlaw Star has sort of deployed its grappler arms, the Eldorado has yet to really do the same. I guess sort of betraying an intention to stay at range and keep picking away at the Outlaw Star. And to be fair, if you're more comfortable in the asteroid field navigating and all that, that's probably your best bet, to just sort of kind of try and stall things out like that. Because when you get down to it, the Outlaw Star has to be skillful or lucky in deflecting all these missiles. The Eldorado only has to be lucky a couple times. So unfortunately, Gene is relying on the idea that eventually the Eldorado will run out of ammunition. And, that's not a good thing to be relying on because, despite taking out most of the incoming missiles, they are still hit every now and then, which, it's probably starting to stack up, You can only get shot so many times before things start to fail. And I guess, when you're really relying on them to run out of missiles, that's not a long-term strategy. So it seems like they really are just kind of up the creek without a boat here, because they can't deploy sensors and cameras because the effective range would be likely too short. It wouldn't be enough to capture the Eldorado or anything like that. So unfortunately, it seems like Gene has latched onto an idea here. He was initially threatening to throw Aisha off the ship out of the airlock, but now, he's going to kick her out as a lookout, essentially. Which, I mean, that's gotta be insanely dangerous. Sitting outside in an asteroid field like that with only a spacesuit, essentially. Ooh. So that's not good. You know, the McDougalls are talking to another ship, which sort of leads to the idea that there's up to something. But the fact that they also declare they do have a fair supply of missiles left, you know, it seems like something's going to have to happen rather than just waiting things out. So the only question is, which ship has Jean latched onto? I feel like it is the real El Dorado. Oh dear. Deeply unfortunate that Jean wasn't aware that this was also a grappler ship. I guess I kind of assumed he would know that, but it would only make sense when you think about it, with the McDougal brothers being sort of preeminent bounty hunters and mercenaries. This is kind of interesting. You know, we haven't seen this side of the McDougal brother before. So he certainly is, well, kind of out of it, I guess. Like, he certainly seems to be misanthropic to a degree we hadn't really seen thus far. Oh dear. So Jean, I guess he's got an unfortunate idea here. He's having Jim sort of take the controls while he boards the enemy ship, which, I mean, that seems like a very risky prospect, you know? Ooh. So it's interesting that despite the sudden boarding, you know, McDougal himself isn't remarkably concerned about everything. I mean, it seems to me that he's probably got, like, some other trick up his sleeve. Ooh, you know, that might be the other trick, I guess. It seems like powered armor is not uncommon here, but, I guess Jean's quick thinking sort of allows him to bypass it. I do find it interesting that it's just McDougal's sort of lackeys who are trying to delay Jean. Ooh. Yeah, that looks very dangerous. So, while Jean is stuck talking with the McDougal brother, it seems like he's trying to hack into the Outlaw Star systems, which, oh, that's not good at all. Because seeing as how the Outlaw Star is sort of like a novel ship, Melfina's kind of linked in with the ship too, so, oh dear. I guess the question remains, to what end is McDougal trying to hack the Outlaw Star? Like, I reckon he probably wants the ship to hand over to clients or for himself, but, man. It's kind of an interesting bit of multitasking to sort of hack and, you know, keep the guy with the gun pointed at you placated. You know, I guess this sort of raises the question of what is the deal with the McDougal brother here? Because to hack into a computer system with organic components, I feel like you have to have some specialized hardware or something, you know. There's got to be something else going on here, because, like, I don't know. It would be very difficult to hack into an entirely unique computer running on its own unique operating system, you know. I guess this might be a sort of analogous type of situation. Alright, so despite all the bravado, it seems like Mr. McDougal here is not as tough as he would claim to be. perhaps it's an act to try and lower Jean's guard. After everything, I feel like you really can't put much past him. Ooh. Unfortunately, I feel like Jean has touched upon something here. You know, if this McDougal's claiming to be young and not really involved with the death of Jean's father, then that must mean there's someone else here. And if that someone else is on this ship, you know, that's kind of a dangerous thing to be unaware of up until now. Of course, it seems like the other McDougal's in another ship. Yeah, even so, if the Outlaw Star and the El Dorado are currently grappled and there's another El Dorado going around, I feel like, I don't know, things are going to get dangerous really quickly. Although, given that Harry McDougal, as we now know him to be called, is sort of mumbling to himself about blowing them to smithereens, I feel like he's about to initiate some very volatile destruct sequence. I mean, that or, you know, he and his other brother are just gonna, like, blow the whole thing to perdition. Kinda 6 of 1, I imagine. Well, I guess that answers that. I do find it interesting that he would be so willing to blow up a ship like that, because, like, ships surely don't come cheap, right? Yeah, well, I guess that settles it then. The McDougals are probably going to get away clean despite Jean's best efforts and, you know, what he would prefer. Because, like, at this point, he doesn't really have any actual answers. So I guess it is kind of interesting that Harry here is, you know, actually kind of distraught having been shot in the arm. Like, it wasn't really an act. So despite all his bloodlust, he is kind of a wimp, too. You know, it's an interesting sort of mix of traits, which I feel probably lends him to bouts of excessive cruelty. You know, he just kind of seems like the type, if that makes any sense. Yeah, so I guess, once again, the crew's back to square one. You know, the McDougals have got away, they don't really have a lead, they don't know where to go for the galactic ley line, and now they have to pick up Aisha. You know, Jean's got half a mind to leave her behind, as prompted by Jim, but, you know, she was helpful. It wouldn't do to just strand her on an asteroid. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.